All right, guys. So last time, we discussed about that, we need to build a lab, and we did go through the installation of the ESXi on what the options are. So today we're going to finish the installation of the lab, and then, we'll continue on. So this AD server that we have installed yesterday, we now need to deploy the roles. So what I will do is that I would promote this server to a domain controller so that all the authentications and all that can be done later. It is just to give you a feeling as if it happens in a corporate environment. We have Active Directory, all those things are there. So I just want to replicate the same over here so that we understand on how the AD groups can be used. I'll give the same password as welcome at 123 W in caps. In the meantime, I'll quickly set up the other two ESXIs as well that we need for the lab. So we need 3 ESXIs in the lab. I'll quickly spin up the last one as well while the Windows machine is booting up. Now all these machines have to be on the same network, VMnet 18, so that they can talk to each other. I'll just make sure that they are on the same network. The first 3 should be. I'll just put the other 2 also. Sorry. For the first time, Windows might take some time, to boot up. Once this is done, then, from the next time onwards, it will go a little quickly. Okay, in the meantime, I'll begin with the installation of the esxi. It is the same steps that we followed yesterday, nothing new. I'll give the same password as welcome@123, which I've been giving for all the other passwords. F11, we begin with the installation. Okay, I'll log into my Windows machine now. I'll change the time zone over here so that, it matches to where I am. Okay, so my domain controller is done. I need to go ahead and set up DNS first. Let me go ahead and set up DNS. DNS is very important in VMware. We need to make sure that the forward and the reverse, they both work well. So I've got DC01, but let me add the reverse one over here as well. Okay, I'll update this entry over here. Okay, and now I need to create few records. Okay, so what I need to do is that I need to have a storage open filer that I've created. So I need to have a static IP for that. So I'll enter SAN01 and I'll give an IP as 10.10.10.11. I'll update the PTR. Now for the esxis, I will create an entry for esxi01, needs to be 10.10.10.12. esxi02, it needs to be 10.10.10.10.13. esxi04, it needs to be 10.10.10.10.14. Oops, it had to be esxi03. Okay, fine, no problem. I'll add esxi03 also, and I'll give it as 15. And I need to add for a vCenter. So when we deploy vCenter, it also needs an entry, and this will be 10.10.10.16. These are all the DNS entries that we need for now. Now, once this is done, let me quickly set up DHCP. Okay, this installation is done. I'll trigger this one over here so that all our ESXIs are available and working well. We then need to do a manual configuration for these ESXIs, and I'll show you on how it needs to be done, how we assign a static IP, how we access them, everything we're going to talk about it. Okay, I would say close over here. Now I need to open DHCP and create a pool over here. So I'll go to IPv4, I'll create a new scope and I'll give it as client DHCP. You can give anything that you feel like. And basically I'll start with 10, 10, 10, 100. And it'll go to 10, 10, 10, 1, 150. 50 IPs are more than enough. I'll keep 24. I don't need any exclusion. All the default options are fine. I'll add default gateway, though this is a bogus one, but I'll add it anyway. Activate the scope and finish. So my DHCP got assigned. Okay. Now the open filer machine that I have, if I reboot it, then theoretically it should pick up an IP from the DHCP. Okay. Let's wait for it and see if it picks up an IP. And same should happen with the ESXi as well. If I go ahead and reboot the ESXi, so you see this one picked up the IP 10, 10, 10, 100 from the DHCP, ESXi1 and the open filer, this should also pick up a dynamic IP. And then we will change them to static and see how it behaves. Okay. Now, when we have configured our AD, it is time now that we configure our ESXi, and I show you that on how we assign a static IP and how we access it. Okay. Now ESXi installation, once it is done, earlier we used to need one Windows tool to access the ESXi, but now things have changed and everything is accessed over a browser. So all that we need is a browser and we will be able to access it. So what we need to do is that I need to copy few setups, and what the setups are. So basically what I need to do is I need to copy Chrome, Firefox, PuTTY, and I would also copy this VMRC. This is needed later. I'll tell you why we need it. So for now, I'll just copy them on the local machine. And I'll install Firefox, because Windows Explorer, Windows Internet Explorer is not that great when it comes to accessing the ESXi over browser. So it is good, to have a Firefox or to Google Chrome, whichever one is your favorite. You can install that and just access the ESXi's from there. Now, what would happen is that once the ESXi, picks up an IP, and if you try pinging it, you would see that this IP will be reachable. So if I show you the command prompt over here, and if I ping 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 100, you see that the IP is reachable. Now, what I have to do is that I have to access this ESXi, and the only way today it can be accessed is over a web browser. So if you have a Linux machine, if you have a Windows machine, if you have a Mac, or if you have any other operating system, it hardly makes any difference. All that you have to do is come to the browser, just type 10, 10, 10, 100, hit the enter key, and it'll let you know that there is a security warning. Why this message comes up is because the ESXi has a self-signed certificate. This ESXi has a self-signed certificate, and that certificate is not recognized by the browser. So Firefox is unable to understand that certificate, and that is why it gives you a message of a potential warning. But we know that this certificate is for ESXi. We trust the technology, and that is pretty okay. So we can just simply go ahead with it. And now here we need to log in to the ESXi. So if you install the ESXi, this is the only way to access it, by going to the browser. Now to access the ESXi, I need to log in via root. The reason I log in via root is because it has a Linux kernel. ESXi is made up of Linux. That is the reason I have to go with root. And the password that I specified during the installation, that was welcome at 123. Now here you would see a pop-up, which is basically talking about VMware's Customer Experience Improvement Program. This is called CEP. CEIP. So CEP basically means that VMware will collect information from your environment, nothing personal, but only related to VMware to make their product better for future. So if there are any bug issues or if there's any crash issues, so VMware will collect that and they will make the product better for themselves. That is why they are asking for your permission that would you like to join this program. Now it depends on you. If you would like to join the program, great. If you do not want to join the program, you can simply uncheck it. Okay. Now it depends on you. What would you like to do? Okay. And you can simply hit OK. Now this is my main window for the ESXi. So when I log into my ESXi, this is the way it looks like. So here, if I tell you, this is the name of the ESXi. It says local host. This is by default. I'll show you on how we change it. This is the version it is running. What is the state of the ESXi normal? It is right now not connected to any ESXi server, sorry, any vCenter server. What is the uptime over here? How much CPU, memory, storage, all these details would be mentioned over here. Now you can create a virtual machine, but again, this is not needed. So basically as a VMware admin, we manage our environment, everything from the vCenter server. We do not make any changes from the ESXi. Every environment, would have a vCenter server by default. If you're working for a very small environment, then things might be different that, you might not have a vCenter, but generally all the environments that I've seen, generally you would have a vCenter and you manage everything from the vCenter. Though you can make the changes from the ESXi directly as well, but this is not recommended. I would not suggest you to come to the ESXi and make changes over here. The reason because, you know, this is one ESXi and you're managing it from here. For example, if you have got 100 of ESXis, so if you have 100 ESXis, you need to open 100 tabs. And when you open 100 tabs, it is not humanly possible to manage all of them. You cannot have 100 ESXis and managing 100 tabs and doing the configuration. This is not possible. We need one central location, which is the vCenter, and from there you manage everything. How we install the vCenter and all those things, we'll talk about it a little later. But for now, this is a basic ESXi, which looks like by default, you would see that, this is running in an evaluation mode, and this evaluation mode is valid for 60 days. After 60 days, it will ask you to enter a license key. Now here you see the manufacturer as VMware Inc. because I am running ESXi in VMware Workstation. If you install it on an HP machine or a Dell machine, it will show you the manufacturer and the model. It will give you all the details, what it is over here. Okay. Now, if I talk about the monitor tab, this monitor tab over here is basically about, as the word says, you cannot make any changes over here. You can only see things, when it comes to the monitor tab. So for example, you want to see what is the utilization, this is what you can see. You can see what is the hardware components health status over here. This is my lab, that is why it will not show up. However, if it was an HP server or a Dell server, all the hardware details would have come up, like power supply, CMOS battery, RAM, all the other details would have come up over here. Here you would see all the events, which is like you log into the environment, what you do, from where you're accessing it, all these basic details would come up. Then you would find a task window. Task window is basically any user initiated task. If there's anything that you do on the ESXi, then it will get logged over here. This log tab basically shows you the location of the logs which are available on the ESXi. We will talk more about the logs, what every log file means, why it is there, and more information about it. So this will all come later. The manage tab is an option where you can manage your ESXi. That is, if you want to change anything on the ESXi in terms of settings, in terms of configuration, then manage tab is the one from where you can do it. Okay. So for example, you see so many advanced settings over here. VMware would not stop you, to make any changes to your environment. They give you the entire control and you can make any change that you feel like to your environment. However, you need to understand what a setting does, and is it really important to edit it? Is it really important to change the value over here? Out of 100 customers, for example, if VMware has 100 customers, say about 90 to 95 people, 90 to 95 customers would run the default configuration. There would be no changes, when it comes to all these advanced settings, because you need to know what the setting is. And VMware has done actually a lot of testing in the backend, before they come up with this number. So if we are changing the setting, we should absolutely be sure that what this setting is for and how it will impact the environment. If we are not sure what the setting is and how it will impact, the best is not to touch it, not to edit it. Let the uh, default configuration be here, and you manage your environment. Okay. But however, by default, there are many configurations that can be edited. Um, if VMware technical support engineer tells you yes, then that point you can definitely change it. However, you should not change the settings on your own. Here, we can specify date and time. If there is any VM that needs to be automatically powered on, this can be done. You would find the hardware details over here of the hardware. Which license is this? You have given the license key about, and here it has all the features which are available related to that license. So you have only one ISO. Like, so if you go with an enterprise edition or you go with a standard edition, basically you have the same ISO. Depending on the license key that you put, the features will get enabled or the features will get disabled. So whichever the license key you put, if depending on that license key, if it's of enterprise plus edition, then all the options will be enabled. If it's standard, then options will get disabled. So same ESXi, same ISO, but it is only a difference of the license key, which makes the difference of what gets enabled and what does not get enabled. Then here it talks about all the packages which are deployed on the ESXi. Here, it talks about the services that you can enable. And again, the by default security accounts and the authentication. Again, you should not make any changes from the ESXi directly. My suggestion would be everything can be done from the vCenter. When you deploy vCenter, when you add ESXi to it, all the changes can be done from there. And that is the best practice to do it. You should manage your environment from the vCenter instead of logging to the ESXi directly and then making the changes. That is something that you should not do. Now here,
Sorry, I have a question.
uh-huh.
I've had an instance where a situation where
Mm-hmm.
out of our 10 ESSI hosts, 3 disconnected from vCenter. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? So
Uh-huh.
I had to log in to directly to the ESSI console to make the change, because
Uh-huh.
I wanted to, since I can't do it via vCenter until we resolve the issue. So I quickly did it, log into ESSI directly and extended the disk. Then it worked. So, but we later resolved the issue and everything came up.
Yeah, so good point. So Solomon, as you mentioned, you would only log into the ESXi when there is a need, when things are not working. Then only during those troubleshooting times you would log into the ESXi directly. If things are working in your environment, then there is no need for you to log into the ESXi directly. You can just manage the complete environment from the vCenter.
Yes, I agree with you.
right? So when ESXi is not responding, when things are not working well, then definitely we need to log in to the ESXi over the console, or via the web portal, to see that what can be done to bring it back to the vCenter. However, if things are all working okay, there is hardly any need for you to log in. Okay, cool. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so now here, we would have an option of creating virtual machines on the ESXi. From here, we can create the ESX, virtual machines. But again, let's not do it from here. We'll do it from the vCenter. Here you would see the storage, how many data stores are here, and here you would see the networking. So this is a basic console of the ESXi when you access it from the browser, and this is the only way on how we access it. Now, right now, this ESXi that I have over here, I need to change its name and I need to change its IP, because the IP which is picking it up right now, it is from DHCP. I do not want DHCP IPs. I want static IPs over here. Okay. So how do we change to static IP? All that we have to do is that we need to log into this window. Now this window that you see over here, this is basically called DCUI. This window is called Direct Console User Interface. How do you get to this window? Is that if you have installed ESXi on an HP server, then you would have to log into the ILO, the out of band management connectivity tool on HP. For example, for Dell, it is DRAC. Every company, every vendor, every manufacturer has, one tool or the other on how you access it. So it is the console connection that you need to take. So for example, when you log into HP ILO and when you open the screen, then this is the window that you would see. It is basically as if you connect a monitor to your desktop. So if you have a desktop with no monitor connected to it, you would not be able to understand that what is running or where the desktop is stuck currently. When you connect the monitor cable, then you get to know that where things are stuck, what is not moving, what is the error. Same is applicable over here. This window that is connecting the monitor to the desktop can be done via HP ILO. So when you open HP ILO, it will show you what is running on the screen. Okay, and when you open that window, then this window comes up, and this is called DCUI, Direct Console Interface. And from here, very limited number of options can be done. I'll show you all the options which can be done, but they are very few. And again, Solomon, to your point, that you would only come to this window when things are not working. Okay, so if things are working on the ESXi, that is, if you have network connectivity, then you will basically do an SSH, or you will connect to it via browser and you would manage it. You would not log into this window. The only reason, or the only time I should say, that you would log into this window is when ESXi is not there on the network. When you have lost connectivity to the ESXi over the network, then this is the window that you will open to understand or to do troubleshooting to see that why ESXi is not responding. Okay. And this window again comes up via HP ILO.
Okay, if you said like but how do we know which IP should we connect through the browser
This is
to get connected? Because this
so
has been assigned by DHCP right now,
correct. So you
but we
open the
need
ILO,
static
no?
IP, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
So
but we
what
need
would happen?
static IP.
True. So Sayed, what would happen is the network team will give you a static IP, because they are the ones who are managing the network for you. So they will
Okay.
check up, they will look it up that in their VLAN, which is a free IP, they'll allocate you that IP, and you then need to open HP ILO, open the console, see which IP it picked up from DHCP. You then make the changes.
Can't we
Okay.
assign the IP for ILO on the host?
So ILO, you can assign a manual IP on the HP server, but again, that is something that cannot be done by you. When you rack the server, when you install the server for the very first time, at that point time only, the
Oh,
local person who is racking the server will put the IP address in the ILO window. Because when you stack the server in a data center rack, there is absolutely zero connectivity. So how would ILO pick up an IP? So that is why a manual IP needs to be entered over there, or if it can pick it up over DHCP, that is also fine. no problems.
Okay.
So it basically depends on how you want to do it. Basically, it is the first time the person who is installing the server in the data center will put the ILO IP. You then access it over that IP, install ESXi, let it pick up a DHCP IP, and then you change it to the static IP. Okay. All right then. Now, how do I change the IP and what this window has to offer? Let's talk about that. So you see over here that there are two options, that you can go ahead with. You have an F2 option and you have an F12 option. F12 option is basically to restart, to shut down the machine. That is the ESXi. And then F2 option is for the customization. If you want to make changes to the configuration of the ESXi, then this is the way you go about it. Now, here it shows that you are installing ESXi 8. If it was a physical server, it will show you HP, Dell, whatever the model number is, which CPU you are running, or how much memory you have given, all these details will come up. And then it will show you that currently which IP it has and how you can manage it. Now we need to make the changes over here. So we will hit the F2 key. Now there's one more thing to keep in mind. That is, look at this tab over here, the arrow that you see, look at this tab over here. Now, if you have to hit the F2 key, you have to click on this window, you have to click on this browser window. When you click on over here on this gray window, on the gray yellow window, when you click on it, then you can hit the F2 key and then it will ask you for the login. Okay. And now if you see the message on the right side, it says that your mouse pointer is locked. To unlock it, you have to press Control Alt. You see this message over here? It says press Control Alt to release your mouse. So this is what it needs to be done. So when you hit when you click on it and when you hit F2, it will ask you to put in the password. You put in the same password that you specified during the installation. And then once your arrow is in, it will tell you that, if you need to release your, mouse pointer, then you click on Control Alt. Now, let me talk about all the options that we see over here. The first option is about basically configuring the password. The password that we have, welcome at 123. If you want to change it, we can do it from here. The second option, lockdown mode, I'll tell you about it later, not right now. What does this option mean? If you want to make any changes to your network, right? Like right now, it has picked up a dynamic IP. I want to change it to static IP. Then this is the window I go over here, configure management network. I'll hit the enter key. Now to come back to the main menu, you hit the escape key. So when you hit the escape key, you come back to the main menu, you select the option, you hit the enter key, and you then go in that option. Okay. Now here it will show you all the network adapters that you have. So for example, the first IP that I'm setting up for this ESXi is the management IP, is the IP on which I will access the ESXi. Now, for example, by default, it will always be on VMNIC 0. That is the first physical network card. If you want it to be on the second network card or third network card, you can choose that network card. And by hitting the spacebar key, you get that option of X. X means that you have selected that network card. Every network would have a VLAN. This is my lab. I do not have a VLAN over here. However, in your production environment, every IP is associated with a VLAN. So you need to come over here and enter your VLAN ID. Okay, whichever IP you have been allocated by your network team, that IP would belong to an VLAN range also, to one VLAN number. You need to enter that VLAN number over here. It depends on your configuration, what your VLAN number would be. The best folks to answer this question will be the network team. Now, in your organization, if you're using IPv4 internally, great. Or if you're using IPv6, you can configure both of them. In my lab, I'm only using IPv4, so I'll hit the enter key. And now you see over here, the default option is to dynamically pick up an IP. I want to have a static IP. So I will choose this option of static and I will hit the space bar key so that, the little O comes down and, it highlights or it selects this option. Then then I need to enter the static IP. So the static IP for my ESXi01, if I go back to my DNS, is 10.10.10.12. So I'll enter 10.10.10.12. The subnet mask and the default gateway looks okay. IPv6, I do not need it. I'm not using IPv6 in my environment. So I will disable it. DNS configuration, my DNS server is okay. If I have an alternative DNS server, I can mention it over here. If not, I can just type my host name, esxi-01. DNS suffix, it already picked it up, lab.local. Now I want to go back to the main menu, so I hit the escape key. Now it says that you have made changes to your network and you have disabled IPv6. VMware recommends you to reboot your machine. Do you want to reboot it? Say yes. The reason you can reboot it now is because this is a new server. There is nothing running on this server. There is no virtual machine running on this server. There is nothing critical on this server, so you can absolutely reboot it. It is important to keep in mind that the value of VMware, I should say the value of ESXi is only till the time there is virtual machine running on it. If you have an ESXi with no virtual machine on it, for example, this is an ESXi and you do not have a virtual machine on it, then basically it has zero value. Right? There is zero value of a dummy ESXi or of an ESXi with zero virtual machines. The importance of the ESXi comes when there is a virtual machine on it. And basically it is about the application. The application running on the virtual machine, that is the most and the critical part in the organization. Apart from the application, the ESXi, the virtual machine, they are absolutely not that important. It is the application which is the, I should say, the most loved baby, in the company, because if application goes down, your environment gets down and you lose money, right? So for example, if I talk about, espn.com, so that's a cricketing website, like, and if you want to see something about any sports activity, you would go to espn and see, what is coming up. If that website espn goes down, then that is a financial loss to the company, because people are not able to hit their main website. They might be able to buy something from there. They might be able to do so many other things from there. So application is very important. Till the time ESPN is up, if there's any ESXi server in the backend which was going down, that should be okay with them. But because their main website is up.
I'll call you. I'm in a class. I'll call you. Yeah.
Okay, so now I have changed the IP over here. And now if I try accessing or try pinging this ESXi, so if you see, if I try pinging ESXi01, the ping goes okay. And now I can access this machine by entering the URL. Oops, my bad. ESXi01. It will again complain about the certificate because the browser does not know about the self-signed certificate of the ESXi, but we know that the certificate is okay. So we'll say that's fine. You can proceed with it. I can bookmark this page as ESXi01. Okay. And to log in now, I can log in via root and I can specify the password welcome at 123. I can save the password now. This is my lab. And you see over here that the name has got changed. Okay. Now, if I go back to ESXi01 again, I would log in. So we know, what configure management does. Now, if you have made a change to the IP address and for some reason you are not able to reach that IP address, then one of the options is that you can restart the network component which is there on the ESXi, the network service, which can be done from here. Again, this is very rarely, you would probably run the service or restart the service. If you want to verify the connectivity, that is from your ESXi, are you able to reach your other machines in the environment? So you choose this option, hit the enter key, and then you can specify the IP that you want to reach and the name that you would like to resolve. So when you enter all these details over here, you can hit the enter key and ESXi will now try reaching these IP addresses. Now the first one, 10.10.10.1 is a bogus and a dummy IP. I am not using that IP in my environment. So it will not get resolved, but the others should get resolved. So it says okay over there. So 10.10.10 is my domain controller and ESXi01, this name resolution is happening okay because I have created a DNS and the name resolution works well. Okay. Now, if you have goofed up or if you have made a lot of network changes and now you want to, come back to square one, you do not want to have, all the network configurations, someone has messed it up and, you would like to just come back to the original default configuration, then this can be done again. However, with this configuration, you need to keep in mind that you would lose everything. You will lose all the network settings and you will come back to the default settings. Now, this option, if I tell you honestly, I've never used it in 13 years. I mean, I've been working on VMware environments for close to about 13 years now, and I've never used this option because this is very rare. So it's not that some you are playing around with esxi, you're trying to have some fun, and you're trying to see that how it option works in lab. Of course, you would be able, you can use it and you can see how it works, but in production I don't think so that you will ever get an opportunity to run that, to run this option, because it's very rare that you mess up all these configurations, because you go very slowly when it comes to doing the configuration. You double check everything twice or thrice, and before you make any selection, or before you add any entry. My US default is the default, keyboard layout. If you want to change it to UK or any other country which is native to you, and you are comfortable with that keyboard style, you can definitely change it from here. In case if you did not select the right one during the installation, this setting can be altered. Now here it talks about the troubleshooting options. The troubleshooting options are basically that if you want to, okay, let me give you an example. So let's say that you have an ESXi, it is working well. Now you want to go to the command line of the ESXi. What would you do? You would basically do an SSH. You will SSH to the ESXi, and you would see that what the problem is, and you can run all the VMware commands from there. The other option is you can log into the UI, like Solomon said, you can log into the UI directly, and from there you can check things. However, let's take an example that your ESXi is not responding on the network. Your ESXi is not responding to ping, and if ping is not working, SSH would not work, and you are unable to log into the um, web browser. So then that is the time that you will log into this console, right? DCUI, direct console user interface via HPILO. That is the time that you will log into this window and you will come over here. Now from here, to get to the ESXi command line, what you have to do is you have to enable shell. So if you see over here, it says enable ESXi shell, and it says over here ESXi shell is disabled. So what you need to do is you need to select this option and hit the enter key. Now, when you hit the enter key, you will see that it says now ESXi shell is disabled. If you hit the enter key again, it will switch it to disable. If it's on disable, you hit the enter key, it will switch it to enable. Okay, so ESXi shell needs to be enabled. Now, once you have enabled ESXi shell, then on the keyboard, you need to hit Alt F1. When you hit Alt F1, then it will bring you to the login prompt. Now here you specify the root and the password that you specified during the installation, that is welcome at 123, and you get to the command line and you can run the commands as you feel like. Okay. Now, if you would like to go back to that yellow and that gray screen that we were seeing earlier, so you have to hit Alt F2. So you hit Alt F2, you come back to this screen. Now, if you want to go back to the command line, you hit Alt F1. You hit Alt F1, you come back in, you hit Alt F2, you can go back out. Now, this is something that you will only do when your ESXi is not available on the network. When ping pong is not responding of the ESXi, then that is the time you would log in via HPILO, and then you will, basically try out and see to figure out that, what the concern is and why it is not responding to the network. This is again very rare, very seldom you will do this, because most of the time the ESXi is available on the network. You will quickly do an putty and bang, in you go and you can check anything. This window you would only come to when ESXi is not responding
Sorry,
on the
how
network.
can we how can we log in through the shell via PuTTY?
So via PuTTY, all that you have to do is you
Yeah.
have to enable the SSH. You need to enable SSH. So like over here, it says SSH is disabled. I hit the enter key. SSH is enabled. I go back and then I double click on the PuTTY. I type in esxi-01.lab.local. I hit the enter key. I say yes, I want to connect. I type root, I type password, welcome at 123, and in you go. Okay.
Okay, you type the IP. Okay.
Yeah, you can type IP, you can type name, whatever you feel like. To connect to the ESXi, you can, you can just put anything. It needs to have network connectivity. Put in the root, the password that you specified, and it will let you log in.
Okay.
Does this answer your question, Solomon?
Does, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now, if the network connectivity is not there, then you would come over here and you will play around with Alt F1 and F2 by enabling shell so that you can make that you can see what is going on. Okay. If you want to modify their timeout values, you can do that. We have a host agent, which is the management agent. You can restart it as well, but that's very rare. In olden days, I would say when we were running ESXi 4.0 and 4.1, at that point of time, the management agents were restarted very frequently because the ESXi had a lot of bugs, back then. I'm talking about 2011 and 2010. But now things have got very smooth. Hardly, you would have to restart a management agent. It's on a very rare occasion you would find that. Okay. I hit the escape key, I come back. Now again, if you want to see the logs, there are 100 ways, to see the logs in ESXi, but definitely this is not a recommended one. Via this screen, you will only see the logs when ESXi is not responding on the network. When ESXi is responding on the network, then you would see the logs via SSH. You can download the log bundle and you can do all the other things. But again, from here, if you want to view the logs, you can view it, but no one does it from here. Again, the support information is something very different. Hardly you would use it because there's nothing critical that you get from here. It is basically the licenses that you get and very basic details that you get. Nothing major you would see over here. Yeah, very basic information you would get, that what firmware is running and what information you have, what is the tag number and all that. I mean, yeah, very basic information you get. And then, for example, if you have messed up a lot of things on the ESXi installation, I mean, post installing ESXi, if you messed up networking, configuration, a lot of things, have been messed up and you want to reset everything. You want to just come back to the default, you just want to come back to everything and, start all over again, afresh. Then you can hit this option of reset system configuration. This will reset everything. It will take everything back to the default, and it will even reset your password. So there would be no password by default, and then you would have to set up a new password again. These options you would never get a chance to run in the production. These are all good to know things that what it can do, but I don't think so personally that you will ever encounter these issues in the production environment where you will have to run them. Okay. This is all that this window has to offer, and these are all the basic options that you can run from here. Nothing major. Okay. Now what I will do is that I will set a static IP on all the other ESXi so that we are on the same page and the configuration and the lab looks okay. Okay, I'll put the static IP over here. What was it? ESXi02.13. I'll disable IPv6. DNS, I will enter the name. esxi-02. I'll hit the escape key. It'll ask me to reboot because I've disabled IPv6. That is okay. I need to do the same over here on esxi-03 as well. I'll come over here, choose the IP. Let me see what IP I have over here for esxi-03. It is 15. Okay. So I'll come back, enter 15 IPv6. I will disable it. DNS configuration. Again, I'll set the name as esxi-03. All looks okay. I'll hit escape key. It'll ask me for reboot. I'll say perfectly fine. You can go for the reboot. Yeah. All right. Now, let's move on to the next point. Now, let me ask you a quick question. Oops, I also need to enable OpenFiler. I need to put a static IP on the OpenFiler. So the way I do it is I access OpenFiler over here. That is HTTPS 10.10.10.101:446. I enable TLS. Again, that certificate warning, it doesn't know about OpenFiler, but I know. So that's okay. Browser can continue. And this is, what you would see, the web administration. It has picked up a dynamic IP. Let's change it to the static IP. So by default, the login credentials are the username is OpenFiler and the password is password all in small letters. And then you log in. Over here, I need to change the time. I'm sorry, I need to change the host name. So it will be SAN01. I'll hit update. And you see the interface right now, it has DHCP IP. I need to change it. So I'll click on configure. I'll change to static. I'll say continue. And then here I need to specify the IP. The IP that I have for SAN01 is 10.10.10.11. So if I initiate a ping right now to 10.10.10.10.11, you would see that it is not responding. Now let me change this IP over here. And now I hit confirm. So you would see this IP now starts responding. So I will come back over here. I'll make the change and I would log in. Again, I would log in. Let me save the bookmark browser. Okay.
Why the port number is 446 here? It should be 443, right? For HTTPS.
I mean, it depends on the vendor, no? I mean, you can keep anything. It is OpenFiler as a company. They have changed it in such a way. This is the default configuration. We have no control over this.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I specified the password and I am in. Okay. And yeah. All right. So what I've done right now is that I've configured all my 3 ESXIs. I've installed them. We understand what the installation is. We understand what the options are. I configured a static IP. Same has been done for the OpenFiler. Right now, it is not showing you. If you hit the enter key and if it's a wrong password and it gets updated, no? If not, then go for a reboot. Okay, it is not taking the IP. Let me go for a reboot right now. And then we will see the right IP over there on that portal. Okay, now, so our lab is now up and ready. There are no concerns with the lab. Now let's move on to the next point. That is, I need to talk about ESXi installation options. Okay. So by default, what used to happen in previous versions of ESXi, VMware would say that if you want to install ESXi, you can do it on a USB or you can do it on an SD card. The same card that we have in the digital cameras, or in the smartphones, the external storage card and all those things. On these components, the ESXi could get installed. But now with 7.0 and version 8.0, VMware says that, this is not recommended. In earlier versions, I'm talking about in 2015, I used to install ESXi on USB and on SD card because at that point, VMware would recommend installing ESXi on USB on an SD card. But now they have stopped doing this. Now they do not encourage you to do this. Okay. Now, if you would like to install ESXi, the best option is that you can get an SSD, for example, of 128 GB. This should be more than enough to install your ESXi. Or if you would like to have a local NVMe, component on your server with 128 GB, that should be more than enough. Okay, you do not need to have multiple hard drives. There is no need for you to configure RAID. You don't have to do all that stuff. Just simply get one SSD with 128 GB, and you should be good enough. You should be good to install your ESXi, and it will have too much of space. Yeah, Vijayan, go for it. You don't have to raise your hand, buddy. Just shoot your question. Interrupt me.
Okay, so we can install directly with the ISO file, or we have to use the Rufus just like the Windows operating system?
So what you have to do, very good question. What you have to do is, for example, if you have an HP server, okay, if you have an HP server and you want to install ESXi on it, you should contact HP and ask for the ISO file from them. Reason? Because the ESXi 8 ISO file that they will provide you, it will have all the firmwares and the drivers built in it.
Oh, then we have to pay them directly to the
No.
HP.
No.
Oh.
You do not have to pay them because their hardware, the hardware is from HP, no? You
Oh,
bought an
yes.
HP server. So
Mhm.
when you buy an HP server, they will give you ISO for free. They will
Oh,
not charge you anything for that.
okay.
Okay. So right now in my lab, I am downloading ISOs from the VMware website because this is my lab. In real environment, you should always get the ISO from your vendor. If it's HP, call up HP. If it's Dell, call up Dell. If it's IBM, call up Dell. Call up IBM.
So we have to ask them separately that we are going to use the server as an ESXi, or they will provide us by default.
So what would happen is there is a website for HP SPP. There's a website of HP. You just need to log into that website. You need
Buying
to have an
the
account.
server?
Yeah, when you buy the
Okay.
server, they will ask you to register an account. They will ask for an email ID. So basically, it is your client's email address that they would have, or some email address that would have. When you log in via that account to your HP SPPP portal, there you would find all these ISOs listed over there. So for example, if I quickly Google up, and if I show you HP ESXi 8 ISO, right? So you see over here, VMware ESXi images for HPE servers.
Yeah, HP.com.
Right? So you go over here and you can from there, download. So you see 8.0.
Yeah.
So which is your server, your client is. So they'll tell you go over here and they will ask you to log in. You need to log in and then you can download it. And then it'll tell you that this ISO is valid for which all servers. So you need to make sure that you have a valid server, and then you accordingly download the ISO, and then you can install it. If you have any questions, just call up HP, ask for assistance, and they'll let you know.
It's just like we are downloading the drivers from the website. I mean, for the laptop.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So what would it would help you, Vijayan, in such a way that you do not have to install the firmwares and the drivers. Then additionally, you are installing ESXi and everything comes bundled with it in their custom ISO. So this is a very good option, not to waste your time, energy, and doing that installation and again.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, cool. So talking about ESXi, the best option right now to install ESXi would be on an SSD that you install locally on the server. You should not install ESXi on USB or the SD card as used to earlier happen. One of the other options is, by installing ESXi on a remote SAN. What does that mean? For example, you have an HP server, okay? And then you buy a storage. For example, you have a big HP storage. So what you do is that you basically carve out a small portion of 120 GB, for example, and you present this 120 GB to the ESXi over the network. Now what you do is you install ESXi over here. Instead of having a local hard drive, you can get one storage portion over the network from your storage, and you can install ESXi over there. Okay, and all the configurations, whatever you install, basically gets saved over here. Basically, you have every configuration over here. Now, how does it help you, and why would you want to do this? Let me give you one example. Okay, for example, if you say, if you look at HP DL 380 G10, this is one of the servers that HP has. Okay, if you look at this server right now, and this server is basically a rack mount server. Okay, this is not a tower server. This is a a rack server that you just install it in the rack and you are good to go. Okay, HP also has something called as blade servers, which is basically HPC 7000. Okay, so if you look at HPC 7000, then you would find over here that they have these blade servers. So this is a half height blade server, this is a half height blade server, and this is a full height blade server that you have. Okay, now what would happen is, now this hard drive that I'm talking about, for example, you will present it on this full blade server. You see the server over here, the first one, you would map that remote storage on this ESXi, on this physical box. And then everything is working fine and the ESXi boots up. What if this hardware goes corrupt tomorrow? What if there's a problem with this hardware tomorrow? Then what you can do is,
But that's why we are using the RAID concept.
no. The RAID concept will only be applicable on the hard drive. How would you take out one hard drive from one server and put it on the other server?
Okay, but I never worked on the blades, so I
That's
really have
okay.
no idea.
No problem. I'm just telling you a small configuration. So what would happen is, for example, you have got two servers. Okay, so let's say this is your another server that you have. Okay, right now you have one hard drive of 120 GB going to server one. This is your server one. It is going over here, and you have installed ESXi and everything is working okay. For example, the server goes down. For example, there's some problem with the hardware and this goes down. Now what you can do is that you can map this 120 GB on this server and you can power it on, and boom, the ESXi will come up because it will save all the configurations over here. And when you map it to the server, the hard drive gets mapped, you power it on, it has all the booting files and every configuration, and the ESXi will boot up normally. You see the point that I was trying to explain over here?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. So again, it depends on the design consideration that you have in your environment on how you want to go ahead with the installation. Most of the people again will have a local hard drive on the server and then they would install it. Not hard drive, I should say SSD. Most of the people will have SSD nowadays. I mean, hard drive was back like 8-9 years ago. You would have hard drive, but now you would have one SSD on your environment of 120 GB, and that should be more than enough for your ESXi installation. Okay. Now let me talk about the next point.
And the second server, like the host bare metal machine, the configuration should be the same or can differ?
It can be different also. There should be no problem. Generally, you would have the same configuration in a C7000 enclosure. You do not have different configurations. These two bare metal, these two full rack full blade servers would have the identical configuration. I mean, RAM can change here a little bit here and there, but rest apart from that, everything else should be the same.
Okay.
Now, let me give you an example of ESXi on how it works. For example, I give you a laptop. Okay, this is a laptop that you have, an HP laptop. And on this HP laptop, let's say that you installed Windows or Linux, whichever one is your favorite operating system. And for example, there is a hard drive, on the HP server, on this HP laptop, there is a hard drive over here. The Windows and the Linux, they are installed on the hard drive. Everything is working okay. Hard drive crashes. Okay, the hard drive fails. What would happen to these operating systems? What do you think? What would happen to these operating systems over here.
Everything will be lost.
Yeah.
Everything will be lost. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Now let's tweak it. Let's tweak the example. Now, for example, I have an HP server. I have an HP server over here. This is my HP server. And on this HP server, I have a local hard drive. On this hard drive, I've installed esxi. This hard drive crashes. What would happen to the esxi? Many guesses?
Same thing will happen.
esxi will crash.
Yes, because the hard disk has crashed.
What if I say that the esxi will not crash?
But how that? There is no data.
Good point. Let me show you.
It's a OS, right? ESXi. So obviously it goes with the hard disk.
Yeah, that's the catch. That is the catch over here.
I didn't get it. Could you please explain it?
Absolutely, I'm about to do that. But before I do that, I have to make some tweaks. I have to quickly spin up a new esxi so that I can show you live. Instead me telling it, if I show it to you, that'll be nice. Now, while this is loading up, let me explain you what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. Now, what happens with a Windows or a Linux machine? They basically always need hard drive access. If they don't have hard drive access, you guys are right, the operating system will not work. If the hard drive crashes, Windows or Linux, it will also crash. But when it comes to esxi, things are a little different. Okay. Think about it. Let me give you an example. Think about it. This is your HP server. On this HP server, you have installed esxi, and now you are running your critical mission workload VMs over here. Okay, you have say about 5 production machines which are running over here. And then you have this one hard drive on the esxi on which it is installed. Now this hard drive crashes. If one hard drive can fail 5 production machines, if your esxi fails, all these virtual machines will fail too, right? If your hypervisor cannot tolerate even one hard drive failure, would you consider keeping your virtual machines, your production virtual machines on that hypervisor? You would not. I mean, if you really think that if your hypervisor is so weak that it cannot tolerate one hard drive failure, and because of which my 5 critical production machines, they will go down, why would you run your production machines on that esxi? Why would you run it on that hypervisor?
Yeah, we won't do it.
Right? There was a discussion going on that, Hyper-V, Zen server, KVM, esxi, they are basically of the same category. They all give you hypervisors. Okay. But why only VMware is so popular? Why not others? The only difference is that, like an example I gave you of about Apple and Xiaomi. What VMware can do today, others might do it after 4 years. Okay. Now, what would happen is when this hard drive fails, esxi will keep running. All these virtual machines will keep running. Okay. I'll show it to you. And now let me explain you how does it work? What happens in the background? Let me tell you more about this. What happens is that when you power on a server, you have the server, you power it on, and the esxi is booting up. Okay. And the esxi is booting up. What would happen is, as esxi is booting up, It will transfer all the booting files to RAM. ESXi as an operating system is only of 300 MB. ESXi as an operating system is only 300 MB, heavy, I should say, or I should say light, whichever word you can use. It only requires 300 MB. So what it will do is all the booting files get transferred on RAM. So that is why even though if the hard drive crashes, it has all the booting files in the RAM. It does not need hard drive.
What is the size of the ISO file?
ISO file right now is 600 MB in ESXi 8. Earlier it used to be 350 MB.
Okay, the ISO file is 600 MB, but however, it will save only 300 MB in the RAM, right?
Correct, because everything gets moved to RAM. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to install an ESXi on a local hard drive. Then I will remove that hard drive, and you would see that the ESXi is working well and there are no concerns with it. Let me quickly spin up one and I'll show it to you.
But how long it will work? That's my next question.
Okay, give me a minute.
So we can switch over to the new hard drive. Okay.
So what would happen is when the ESXi fails, of course you need to get a new hard drive, and then you need to install the ESXi again, but you can move all the virtual machines from that ESXi to another ESXi. So there is no loss to your virtual machines. In VMware's world, virtual machines are important, not ESXis. It is the virtual machine which is important to you. The application running on it is important to you, and not the physical box ESXi. No one on earth will be bothered, if the ESXi is down. No one will even get to know about it. People will always get to know about if the production machine is down, and they will be after you that why it is down.
Yeah, of course. He doesn't care about the ASXI.
No one cares about ESXi. They only care about their
The
VM. So
production
if the
service.
hard drive goes bad, you just vMotion the VMs, you move the VMs over to another ESXi, you log a ticket with the HP, they'll get the hard drive, you get the hard drive, install ESXi. It takes less than 30 minutes. You install the ESXi, configure everything, put it back to production and move the VMs over. And you are good to
But
go.
all the suppose in the VM we'll have OS, right? Windows or Linux, and in there
No.
we have applications running, right?
Uh-huh.
So that particular data of the application and everything will be on the local hard disk only,
No.
right? Of the host.
No. So let me tell you how it works. You have an ESXi, you have an HP server. Let's not talk about an ESXi. You have an HP server. On this HP server, you have only one hard drive. Okay, you have only one hard drive, which is of 120 GB. Here you install ESXi. Okay, now you create a virtual machine, VM01 on it. What does a virtual machine needs? It needs CPU, memory, network, and disk. These are the four basic components that a virtual machine needs. These three components will be given by ESXi. What about this one? This one will reside on the storage. The storage, the physical SAN that you have, from that physical SAN, you will cut a portion, for example, 2 terabyte portion, you will cut and you will present it to your ESXi. The disk of the virtual machine resides over here, which is basically residing over here. It does not reside locally on the ESXi. Sayed, does this answer your question?
Yeah. But if we do not have storage, then it will be there in the local hard disk, right?
In that case, there is something called as vSAN. This is a VM.
In worst case scenario, I have just one host and I'm running VMs. I don't have any other thing, like no storage.
Then
Only the
every
hard
day,
disk.
then every day, when you get up, ask God to keep your server healthy before going to bed. Ask God to keep your server healthy.
Right.
That is all that you
Got it.
can do then.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Okay.
So this open filer, is it an open source?
Yeah, OpenFiler is basically only for the lab. You should not use it in the production.
Okay.
This is only for the lab that I'm showing you. In production, you would have, of course, a physical box of storage, which will be of huge amount, hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Okay, so now this ESXi has been installed. I'll quickly reboot it. It should get an IP. And then when it gets an IP, we will access it. We will remove the hard drive and we will see that everything is working fine on this ESXi.
Okay, in that scenario, as you said, vSAN, then when we install the applications on or the OS on the VM, we should let the like the host know that the files for the OS, for example, Windows will be stored on vSAN. We need to let the system know, right? Or
So what would happen is when you create a virtual machine needs these three components. Okay.
yeah.
These three are given by ESXi. On whichever
Okay.
ESXi this VM will run, CPU memory network will be given from that ESXi.
Right. Okay.
When we talk about disk, you need to give a data store. Like,
Oh.
in Windows, we say C drive, D drive, these are called volumes, right? So for ESXi, it is called data store. What C drive is for Windows, same is data store for ESXi.
Okay. Got you. We have to give the,
So we have to configure a data store. Now this data store can be a remote data store, it can be a local data store, whatever you feel like, whatever your client's budget is, I mean, accordingly you can go for it.
Okay. Now I got it. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool, no
Is
problem.
there any option for the cloud storage?
Yes, definitely. You can have like in NetApp, they offer like cloud storages now. So you can have the cloud storage connected to your ESXi. You would have to check for it. I don't think so that,
But there is an option.
I think, if you contact NetApp, there should be an option. I am not 100% sure, but I think, there should be an option. I've not seen that practically, but I think there should be.
What about the RAM?
Sorry?
What about the RAM? That is also available in the cloud?
I did not get it. Say that again, please.
RAM. You said the hard disk we can get the storage. So what about the RAM facility?
No, RAM is there locally on the server, no?
Okay. So
this is something which is local on the server. Now, there is something Intel is coming up with CPU as a service. I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but you should Google it up. That CPU as a service is coming up, that your CPUs on the fly can have more capabilities. I mean, this is something which Intel is working on. So you buy a subscription for your CPU and you get new capabilities, and you don't need that in a month. So then you can degrade it. Everything is coming as a service. So that is the new functionality which is coming up. Okay. Now,
Sorry, I have a question on storage, although it's not related to what we're doing. Do you have an idea of where I can do NetApp storage training?
I would have to see, Solomon, to be honest. I am not very sure about it.
Okay.
You would have to check with Amit if Amit knows anything about it. If not, then I would have to Google it up.
What is the question?
NetApp storage training.
I asked Ahmed, but he hasn't given me any positive response.
One of the challenges is, to have the NetApp storage. I mean, to even buy a NetApp storage is, like huge amount of money.
I know.
So yeah, that is a challenging part. Yeah. Maybe the best would be, if you Google it up, you might find something.
Okay.
Sorry, buddy, I don't have a, a positive answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool. So now if I look at this IP, this is 10.10.10.100. Okay. So I'll go to the ESXi console and I'll quickly type in 10.10.10.10.100. It is already there. I'll quickly log in. I'll initiate a ping. Let me initiate a ping also. 10.10.10.10.10.100. And you see the ping is working okay. I log in via root. I put in the password. Okay, everything is working okay, right? Now I go back to the server. I go to the settings tab. I see the hard drive and I say remove. The hard drive is gone. I uncheck the CD drive and I hit OK. Okay, I'll take you back to this. So I have memory, processor, CD drive, network adapter, USB display, and that is it. I do not have a hard drive over here. Okay. Now I go back to the portal. I see that the ping is still working. So if I stop the ping, initiate the ping is still working. I am here on the console. If I refresh the console, my console stays up. It's not that my console will die. My console stays up. I can log out. I can log back in.
So the question must be how long it will be survive after removing
Until
As long as
reboot.
probably it reboots. Yeah.
after,
Correct. That
okay.
is the right answer.
The
So it
first reboot.
correct. So if when it will reboot, it needs to have those booting files again. So if there's a way you can provide the booting files, it will boot up. If not, then it will not boot up. And now it shows over here that it has lost connectivity to the hard disk. And it says that it will not be able to save any persistent storage. I mean, like, the crash dumps and, few basic things that it writes on the storage. Very basic, those it will not be able to write, but your VMs will be powered up. Your VMs will not go down.
Okay, Vaibhav, can't we do this way? Suppose the ESXi host is running, okay, perfectly fine. And tomorrow, we do not know tomorrow it is working or not the hard disk, okay? Then can't we copy the bootable files and store it in USB for security reasons? So that, tomorrow if the hard disk goes down and the server reboots and again, just to, bring up the server. Like,
No,
as
you would
said,
not do that, to be honest, Saeed. Let me tell you why. The reason is that earlier, I'm talking about 7 or 8 years ago, you have hard drives. And you had hard drives, the spinning ones, and there you would install the ESXi. Now you have SSDs. Now you have NVMEs. There is nothing
No, that is
moving in
okay.
it.
I got your point.
Chances
But,
of
as you said,
chances of SSD failing are very rare now.
But we are
yeah,
doing a
okay.
snapshot.
There
No,
is no
that is
way that
okay.
you can configure that you can copy the configuration files. I mean, my suggestion would be if
The
the hard
bootable
drive,
files which are there in the RAM,
you don't need
can't we
those.
copy it?
You don't
Okay,
need those, to
okay,
be honest. I mean,
okay,
there's no use
okay,
case for it.
okay.
If the ESXi's hard drive fails, all that you have to do, your portal is still up. You go to the virtual machines, you migrate all the virtual machines to the other ESXi. The available next ESXi that you have in your environment. You maintain it, get everything up, and then back it, the production and everything would work okay. Okay. All right then. Any doubts on the question that VMware ESXi works on RAM, and if the hard drive fails, still it's up. Any doubts, any questions on this, please let me know. Okay, I'll move on. I'll power down this machine. This is not needed now, and I'll delete it. My job is done. Okay, fine. Now, let me move on to the other point. So we spoke about that. So no. So we spoke about that you can install your ESXi on local hard drive, USB and SD card. They were an option earlier. You can have it on remote SAN. These two options are not recommended now. What if you say that you have nothing, you have no media on the ESXi, you do not have any hard drive on the ESXi, and you still want to boot your ESXi? How would you do that? There is still an option, which is network boot. You can network boot your ESXi. What this is, let me talk more about this. So for example, you are working for a customer who in a month would have to build 100 ESXis, or who in a month would have to build 50, 60, 80 ESXis. I'm not talking about virtual machines, okay? I'm talking about physical ESXi boxes. So if you have a customer who has a requirement that you have to build 100 ESXis in a month, Now, if you do this manually, there are chances that you will goof up something or the other. You will miss something or the other. There are very high chances of doing it. Now you need to automate this. How do we automate this? The answer is auto deploy. There's a feature from VMware. This is called auto deploy. Now, if VMware has 100 customers, only 2 or 3 will use this feature. Other 95, will not use this feature. Let me tell you why. Auto deploy is helpful when you have to build too many ESXIs in a month, or very frequently you are building a lot of ESXIs. Then only auto deploy is helpful. Okay. What auto deploy will do for you is, let me tell you the workflow now. So you take server 01. Okay, this is an HP server. On this HP server, you install ESXi and you make it perfect. As per your requirement, you make all the necessary changes, you make every configuration, detail, whatever needs to be done on this server, you do it and you make the server perfect for you. Now what you do is you extract an image. Okay, you extract an image now. Now what would happen is all the new ESXi boxes that you get. Let me clean this up. All the new ESXi boxes that you will get, they will have a network card and you will boot from this network card. Okay, like you boot from CD, you boot from ISO, you will boot from the network card. When this network card boots up, it will contact DHCP. We then need to create a TFTP server. And this TFTP server will tell you, this is the server, go get the image of the ESXi. And then over the network, it will download the ESXi's image and the server will boot from it. So what would happen is every time you reboot the ESXi, it will get the image over the network and it will boot it up. And then you don't save anything locally on the ESXi, you save everything like it always happens on an external storage. This is an option of auto deploy. If ESXi does not have any hard drive or anything on it, it can still boot over the network because all it needs booting files. And we just saw in a practical that when it gets the booting files, it will transfer everything to RAM. And then ESXi will keep running until and unless we reboot it. Doubts, confusion, question?
So we have only one option, like via the network only we can install the operating system 8.0.
No, it was 7.0, 6.0. Auto deploy has been there for a long time now.
Okay, so this is the only option. So we can't put it via the pen drive.
No, you cannot do that. So basically, if you want, when the ESXi boots up for the first time, you can install the ESXi image on the local hard drive. If you want to do that, you can do that. Or if you want, every time the server should pick up the image over the network, that can also be done. It depends on how you set up your environment, basically. As I said, if there are 100 customers for VMware, only 2 or 3, will go for this option, others don't. Because every day you're not setting up an ESXi. You are setting up a virtual machine, but not an ESXi. ESXi is a very expensive hardware that you need to buy, and then you need to get ESXi license, and then you can start using it. So it's not that you every day get to build an ESXi. When the environment is all stable and everything is working fine, hardly once a month, even if you build ESI, that is a lot. You don't even get to build, once a month an ESXi also. So that's very rare.
Because my previous company, we do have one server, only one ESXi. It was running on 6.0, I think so. Not 7.0, 6.0, 6.5, I don't remember it. We don't have any network setup. I was thinking how they install the ESXi. That's why I asked this question.
In that scenario, of course, you can install it over HP ILO. So what you will, sorry?
It was a Dell server.
It was a Dell server, then Dell would have a DRAC. Like
okay.
HP has ILO, Dell has DRAC. It is an out-of-band management tool. So what you will do is you will open DRAC, you will mount the ISO, and then you will boot from the IL. So and install ESXi on the server. That is how you will go about doing that. Okay. Does that answer your question, Vijay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. All right.
Whether I'm still have a doubt in my head, like how do you, like you said, for DRAC and for ILO, we do not have to assign a static IP, right? But
No, we
if
do have to.
suppose
We do have to assign. So what would happen
like
is,
how, because we don't have access in the first instance, right?
correct.
Like BCUI.
Right. So what would happen is when you rack the server for the first time, okay, the person who is racking up the server for the first time, he needs to enter the IP addresses for the ILO. And this is the way, the screen comes up. So when you power on the server, like, you would see push F8 for BIOS. There's a, or we are like, push F2 for F2 for BIOS. There's a similar key over there that says push F7 for ILO. So when you push F7, it will bring you to this screen. Here you need to enter what will be the username, what will be the password. When you go to the network tab, you need to put in what will be the IP. So you specify everything over here.
Okay.
You also need to specify the VLAN. So everything you specify over here, how
So
the,
you mean to say you need to have a monitor for this, right? Suppose if you don't have a
correct,
monitor, then it's not possible. Okay.
correct,
Got
correct.
it.
This is the
Yeah,
first
it will
time
be visible.
activity you need to do.
Okay.
Once you do this one-time activity, then you
Yeah,
make a note
then
of what your
yeah.
ILO IP is. Then you always hit that ILO IP
Okay.
and see,
Okay.
what things are working on. Okay, cool. All right, then. Now let me rephrase, what we have done so far. So yesterday we talked about when VMware, when virtualization was not there, how things used to work, what were the challenges, what is a hypervisor, how it can help the customers, what is a type 1, type 2 hypervisor. Then we talked about hypervisor from VMware, which is ESXi, the history, the versions, we spoke all about that. Then we looked at the architecture on basically how ESXi works. We looked at the uh, features of ESXi like overcommitment. We understood that how RAM is shared, what is virtual RAM, physical RAM, how can I build so many virtual machines on an ESXi. Then today, then we spoke about building the lab. We saw that, how we install the ESXi, what the options are for the ESXi, how we install 3 ESXi's lab, storage, and, we got everything together. Um, we then looked at, what are the installation options for the ESXi? How does ESXi work on RAM? When you install an ESXi, how, when you access it over the UI, what the options are, what is DC UI, how we change the IPs and all that. This is what we have done so far. Okay. Any doubts, any questions so far, whatever we have done, anyone, then please let me know. Okay. Now, one last thing I need to do in my lab, and that is to have a storage connectivity. Okay. Now, I've not spoken about storage for now. Okay. So I'm just going to do a storage connectivity. I know that you will have a lot of questions related to storage. My request will be, let's wait for the storage topic to come up, and then you can shoot all your storage questions and I'll be more than happy to talk about it. But for now, if I have to create a virtual machine on the ESXi, I need to have storage. Okay. And that is why I need to set up storage on the ESXi. So I'm just going to quickly do this. Okay. And you can, absolutely feel free to have a look at it. But again, we'll talk about all this when we do the storage configuration later. So what I'm doing right now is my open filer. I gave 20 GB of hard drive initially to install the operating system, and now I'm giving a hard drive of 500 GB. Now this 500 GB will be allocated to my ESXi as external data store. Okay, so I would log in as root. I would specify the password. I would open my open filer. I would log into it.
Above, when you do it like when you move the mouse on different tabs, it is very fast. I cannot follow correctly. Like
Oh, okay.
where, yeah, it's
Okay,
pretty
my bad.
fast.
Okay, my bad. So what I'm doing is first, I just logged into my ESXi. Okay. Right now, you see that there is no storage connected over here. Okay, there is absolutely everything is blank. There's nothing connected to it. I need to connect an external storage to this ESXi. What is my external storage? It is OpenFiler. So what I will do is that I have created a 500 GB hard drive. I will configure OpenFiler so that it presents the 500 GB disk to ESXi as external storage, and this would help me in creating virtual machines. Okay. This is a basic setup on creating a hard drive on OpenFiler for external storage. It is pretty straightforward. As you are looking at for the first time, you might have some questions. Trust me, if you do it 2 or 3 times, I mean, everything will get clear to you. Okay. So what we have to do is that I enter the DNS name. This is not needed. I'm just entering it to fill this up. It is not needed. I can enter my DNS and gateway. Again, this is optional. You fill it, that's fine. You don't fill it, that's fine. Now, OpenFiler will be presenting its disk. So to which IP addresses it should be presenting the disk. So what I do is I enter my entire CIDR 10.10.10.0. Okay, my ESXIs are running on 10.10.10 network. So I present everything to my CIDR 10.10.10 and to this subnet mask. Okay, this is what I say. I say that that anyone with this IP should be able to access the 500 GB disk that I'm creating right now. Okay, I go to volumes. I go to block devices over here, and I should see the 500 GB disk over here. You see the spinning okay drum over here, that's fine. So you see the 500 GB disk over here. Right now it says it has 0 partition. Now I need to format this disk and I need to make it ready for the ESXi to be connected as external storage. So I will click on this disk, and by default it will show me the starting and the ending cylinder. It will show me the complete space. I just need to create a partition over here, and I would click on the button create. The partition will get created. Okay, and now I need to go to volume groups, and I would see my space over here. I just need to add this space to the volume group. I can name it as SAN01, and I would say add volume group. Now I would go to add volumes, and now I need to format it. Okay, I'll create a volume over here, and I would format it with the file system of block esxi fc. I will choose the entire space, the entire 500, whatever the GB is, and I'll give the same name over here, SAN01, and I would say create. Okay. Now I will go to services and I will enable the esxi service, because what would happen is ESXi is the SCSI client and OpenFiler is the SCSI target. So ESXi will connect to this target and will be able to fetch the disk information. So I will go back to the volumes. I will go back to esxi target, and I would add an esxi target because I've just enabled the service. Now I will go to network ACL. I would allow this network that I created earlier, that everyone in this network should be able to access the drive. And then I would map the LUN over here. Okay. This is all that I have to do on the open filer. Okay. The activity from the open filer is done. Now I need to go back to my ESXi. When I go to the storage, I see a storage adapter tab over here. Now my ESXi has to reach out to open filer. How it would do that? It will do it via the help of software SCSI adapter, because it is my hard drive. Okay, it is storage that we're talking about, and it is on SCSI protocol that we're talking about. It is not a network packet that I can ping and then I can access it. It is the hard drive that I have to reach, and which will be done over the SCSI protocol. So VMware ESXi gives me a by default software SCSI adapter. Just like Microsoft Windows, they give you a SCSI adapter. Same is the case over here with ESXi. They give you a software SCSI adapter. It is disabled by default. I need to enable it. When I enable it, I need to expand this option. And then I see an option for dynamic targets. I will click on dynamic target, and I would type in the IP address for my SAN01, which is 10.10.10.10.11. Okay, let me double check the IP. Yes, 10.10.10.11. And I see the same IP over here, 10.10.10.11. Okay, and then I hit save configuration. When I hit save configuration, I hit the refresh button. Then you would see that iSCSI software adapter has got added over here. And now I need to hit the rescan button so that it should be able to fetch for the new hard drives. Okay. So I would do that. And then when I go to devices, I see my open filer over here. The 499, whatever GB drive that I had added in my open filer, now ESXi is able to see it. Now I need to create a new data store out of it. Data store is just like, C drive. What is C drive for Windows? A place where you keep the files. So where would ESXi be keeping the files for the virtual machines? It is on the data store. We will talk all about this, but it is important that we set up a data store right now, else we will not be able to create virtual machines. That is the reason I'm creating a data store right now. Again, in the storage section, we will talk everything about it. I choose the disk from the open filer. I say that, I need to use the full disk. I use the basic version that is mentioned over here, and I hit finish. It says that whatever you have on the drive will be gone. It will be formatted. And I say, that's fine. Go ahead and do this. Okay, you see a task ran over here, create data store. It got created, and I have a SAN01. Now this is SAN01, the data store where I can keep my virtual machines disk. Okay. Now, next topic that I need to start now is the vCenter. Okay, I need to talk about what vCenter is, how we access it, how we deploy it, and what it can help us with. Okay, so let me begin with a quick theory of vCenter, and then we'll begin with the installation. So if I talk about vCenter, it is basically called VMware vCenter. In short, we say it as vCenter. vCenter is a complete software. There is no hardware. I mean, you cannot say that, vCenter is a physical box. vCenter would always be software. I mean, it is only a software. Okay. vCenter only gets deployed on an ESXi. Okay. Generally, you only deploy vCenter on an ESXi. vCenter has got two basic functionalities. The first functionality is central management. That is, from one place, you can manage your environment. For example, if you have 2000 ESXis, you don't want to open 2000 tabs. Like I have over here 3 ESXis, ESXi 1, 2, and 3. Now, if I want to manage ESXi 1, 2, and 3, I would have to open 3 different tabs, because this tab is for ESXi 1. Similarly, I would open for ESXi 2. And similarly, I would open for ESXi 3. For example, if I had 1000 ESXi boxes, I mean, it is not humanly possible to manage 1000 ESXi boxes and open 1000 tabs. I mean, that is something that you absolutely cannot do. Okay. You need something central. one place from where you manage everything. What is that one place? This is called vCenter, and it gives me a functionality of central management. Okay. As a VMware admin, every day when you log into your job, when you log into your shift, to manage your VMware environment, vCenter is the only option for you. You log into your vCenter, do everything from there, and then, when you're about to come back home, you just log out from that window. For 9 hours, if you have a 8 hours or a 9 hour shift, you would be just doing everything on vCenter. That is the only place, to do everything. The second functionality which vCenter offers me is advanced functionality. When I say advanced functionality, I mean I'm referring to HA, DRS, EVC, DPM, FT, resource pool, and so many other things, right? All these functionalities, if I want to have on my environment, I absolutely need to have a vCenter. If I have two ESXi boxes, they would not be able to give me all these functionalities which are mentioned in green over here. Okay. For all this, I definitely need a vCenter. So a vCenter gives me two functionalities, central management and advanced functionality. Okay. Now moving on. When I have to deploy vCenter, when I say that I want to install vCenter, it basically gets deployed in two stages. I mean, there are two steps involved. The first step is about deploying it, right? So when you start installing vCenter, in the first step, it will just go ahead and deploy the vCenter. And in the second step, it will go ahead and do the configuration. Okay. So there are two stages when it comes to installing the vCenter. In the first stage, you deploy it, and in the second stage, you configure it. Now, what happens when I go with the first stage? What happens during the deployment? So what would happen is vCenter has an ISO. Okay, you run that ISO. It will ask you on which ESXi you want to create vCenter. Why? Because vCenter is only one VM. vCenter, when you deploy it, it will create one virtual machine. And where can I run a virtual machine? On an ESXi. So I need to point to an ESXi where this virtual machine will be created. You do not have to create this virtual machine. You do not have to physically install the operating system and then go ahead and install the vCenter. No, you're not doing this. All that you are doing is you are importing vCenter. You are importing vCenter to your environment. When you import vCenter to your environment, you have to give things like name, DNS, IP, NTP, which ESXi it should go on to, all these basic details, data store and all that, all these basic details you have to define, and that is it. And then the wizard will automatically create a virtual machine, install an operating system, install the service, and bring everything up for you. You do not have to do anything. Okay. Now, vCenter has an ISO. How do I get that ISO? To get that ISO, you basically go to Google, and on Google, you type vSphere download. You click on vSphere download. And then you would see an option for vCenter server. You click on go to downloads. And then you would see vCenter server appliance 8 GB ISO. This is what you need to download. Okay, I have already downloaded this appliance. And this is the ISO that you need to download. Okay. Now let's begin the installation of the vCenter. There are few more things that I need to tell you about it, but let me initiate the installation because it will take 30 minutes to complete it. Okay. So what would happen is I go to my DC01, I go to settings, I go to CD DVD, I go to VMware, I choose ESXi 8 and I choose vCenter server appliance and I choose this option 8. I'm this ISO for 8 version. I hit OK. I go to my computer and I see this option. I make a right click and I click on open. Okay. Now to install a vCenter server, it can be done via command line. It can be done via UI, user interface. Let's go ahead with user interface and understand more. Now it is asking you on which operating system are you sitting? I mean, which operating system you have. So basically it means that when you're installing vCenter, basically you are doing this configuration from your laptop. You are doing this configuration from some machine. Okay. So what is that some machine that you have? Is it a Mac? Is it a Linux or is it a Windows? Which machine you have? Okay. The machine that you have, accordingly, you need to run the installer from there. If it's a Mac, you need to go to the Mac one, and then you need to run the installer app over here and contents. I don't know how Mac works, but you need to run it from here. If you have a Linux, then you need to go over here and you need to run the installer over here. And then for Windows, it is basically 64-bit only. I mean, they have written Windows 32, but Vision, it's not 32-bit operating system. Okay, it is a it is just a name that they have given. So in Windows, we have this installer file. So I'll make a right click on this installer and I would say run as administrator. And now this opens up the vCenter portal for me. I mean, the basic installation wizard, what you want to do. All these three options, I will talk about it later. What will upgrade do? What will migrate do? What will restore do? I will talk about it later. Right now, we are concerned with the installation. So I'll click on the installation option. Now you see that, there are two stages, with vCenter. The first stage is you deploy the vCenter. The first stage is that you go ahead and you deploy the vCenter. And the second one is you set it up. Okay, these are the two different options available. So by default, you can only go to the second option when you complete the first one. When we initiate the installation of the first one, it will take close to about 30 minutes to get completed. In the meantime, we can talk about other things. Okay. What this means, I will talk about it later, not right now. So I'll hit next. License agreement, you have to agree, you do not have an option. Now it is saying that on which ESXi would you like the virtual center VM to get created? If you already have a vCenter on your environment, and this is the second vCenter that you're going for, maybe, for example, you have 3,000 ESXi. You have 3,000 physical ESXi boxes. Now, one vCenter can only manage up to 2,000 ESXi boxes. So for the other 1,000 ESXi boxes, you will have to go for a second vCenter. Okay, so basically it is asking you to tell about an ESXi where it can create that virtual machine, because like I mentioned, when you deploy vCenter, what it is doing is it is basically creating a virtual machine from you. And where will this virtual machine run? Always on an ESXi. So you need to specify an ESXi, where this virtual machine can be created. Okay. So what I will do is I'll enter the name of the ESXi, which is esxi01.lab.local. And I'll give the username as root and the password as welcome@123, what I mentioned earlier. I hit say yes. It will connect to it. It will validate that the credentials that you have given are okay or they are not okay. It's going to check that.
Can I ask you a question?
You can ask me 100 questions, not one question,
Yeah.
by the way.
Now, I might be kind of weird, but still, what we did was we downloaded the vCenter server application on your local machine, that is like on your laptop. And from there, you are trying to install the
vCenter.
vCenter application.
But you're pointing it to a ESXi.
Yeah, pointing it toward the ESXi, where it will install it on the esxi-01 server.
Correct, and it will create a virtual machine for it.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
But if you have any question, just shoot. Okay. This training is for you, Saeed. I mean, it is very important and paramount for me that you understand. If you don't understand what I'm teaching you, there is no point in me teaching you. Okay? This training is for you, buddy. Always. Any question you have in your mind, just ask. All right. Now, I specify the name over here. So as I mentioned, it will be creating a VM. Okay. So what will be the name of the VM? So we have already created a name of the VM as VCSA01. Okay. So we'll mention that name over here, VCSA01. What is the password? Again, when it comes to esxi, it has a Linux kernel. When it comes to vCenter, again, it has a Linux kernel. Everything which has a Linux flavor to it will always have a root account, and it will always ask you for a password. Okay. I'll give the same password as welcome at 123 W in caps. Now it is asking me that when you deploy the vCenter, how many esxis would you be connecting to it? By default, at a maximum, you can have 2000 esxis connected to a vCenter. Now, for example, in your environment, if you only have less than 10 esxi boxes, then the vCenter, which will get deployed right now with the tiny option. So if you choose tiny option, it can support a maximum of 10 esxi hosts, and it will only require 14 GB of RAM and 2 virtual CPUs. Okay. However, if your environment is huge, and if you need, like for example, if you have 1300 esxis or 1400 esxis, then you will choose the X large option over here. When you choose the X large option over here, then it will consume 58 GB of RAM. Okay, so depending on the number of esxis that you create, accordingly, here is a very convenient chart for you that you can pick up that what should be your deployment size. While you're installing the vCenter, you should always predict 2 or 3 years ahead of future. That you should ask your client, let's say in next 3 years, how many esxis you plan to deploy. For example, if today you have, I'm just giving you a random number. For example, today if you have 350 esxi boxes, and you say that in next 3 years we would go up till 600 esxi boxes, for example. Okay, so currently you have 350 esxi boxes, so the medium setting is good enough for you. Okay, but you say that in next 3 years or maybe next 2 years, I will go up till 600. Now, when you go up till 600, then medium setting will not be good enough for you. Then you need to go for the large setting. So instead of changing it later, it is good that if you change it now. You should always think about 2 or 3 years ahead down the road, that how much the deployment and what the configuration will look like. If you think that 3 years down the road I will have 600 esxis, then my suggestion would be that you should go for large right now during the deployment. If, for example, you went ahead with the medium installation, and then if you want to switch it over to large, this can also be done. It's not something that cannot be done. It can definitely be done. If you have medium today, you can switch it to large. But again, it's as a good practice. If you know that you would need, if you know that you will have 600 esxis down the road, go with a large right now. Because you can change it, but again, you will have to do some manual configurations over there to bring this from medium to large. So to save yourself from that hassle, it is good that you go initially with large.
Sorry, the storage, 908 or 1358, is it the one the vCenter will consume, or all the VMs will use it? Or we use this storage?
Just give me a minute. Sorry, Solomon, just give me a minute. Hey, Solomon, sorry, I got distracted. Can you please repeat your question?
Okay, what I'm asking is this storage, the storage, we have 5779, we have 694, we have 9. What we consume this storage, is it vCenter or the VM?
Only the vCenter.
Okay, only vCenter. Okay, that's
It is only for the vCenter, not for the virtual machines. It is for the internal operations of the vCenter, because it has to save a lot of graph. It has to save a lot of storage, performance information. So all
okay.
those performance information requires storage, and yes, this is only for the vCenter consume requirement.
Okay.
Okay, suppose, okay, then we create a VM. So VM doesn't require any storage, like space on the storage, right? It's just
VM,
a folder kind of thing.
no. So what would happen is when you create a virtual machine, by default, it will not have a lot of storage requirement. It will only take in KBs. However, when you start installing the operating system, then it will start picking up the storage from the data store.
Yeah, that is okay. But as such, VM, empty VM, does it require
No,
any
empty VM would
separate
only
objects?
require a storage of 10 KB or a 20 KB. That's it.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay. So what I will do for my lab, tiny is good enough. I'll choose tiny. Okay. Then you have options for storage. If you want to expand the storage, you can also do that. For example, you say that, with tiny, instead of going with the default storage of 579, I want to go with X large. Okay, you can do that. Again, this will not be needed. I don't think so. This is too much. I think you can go with default. Whatever option is there, just choose that default. That should be good enough for you. However, if you want to do expanded, you can do that. Why would you do this? You will do in such scenarios wherein you know that you have a lot of performance graphs that you will be saving, or there will be a lot of performance data that you want to save for a very long time. Then in those scenarios, you might do it. Else, for most of the customers, the default option should be good enough. Okay. So I'll hit next over here. Now here it shows me that, on which ESXi, on which data store you want to, create that virtual machine. So I spoke about that virtual machine needs 4 components: CPU, memory, network, and disk. Okay, CPU, memory, network, and disk. So the first 3 components are given by ESXi. They will be given by ESXi, and this will go on to the data store, which is coming from the shared location. Okay, so it is asking me that where do you want to place the files of the virtual machine? So I will say that I want to place it on SAN01, and I'll enable thin mode. Thin mode means you basically take that amount of storage what is needed. I don't give you everything what you need right now. I'll choose next over here. And then I need to specify all the details over here. So I'll choose the by default network, the static IP, and I would say vcsa01.lab.local. I'll give the IP address as 10.10.10.10.16. That is what I have over here. I'll give the subnet mask as 24, default gateway as 10.10.10.1. I'll give the DNS server as 10.10.10.10.10. I'll hit next. Here is a summary. It shows that what you're going ahead with. And then I hit finish. Now what would happen is, as soon as I hit finish, this wizard will start creating a virtual machine. Now, if you go back to the ESXi, and if you hit a refresh, you see VCSA01, it has started provisioning it. Okay.
So can we change the settings after few years or after 1 minute?
Sorry?
Can we change the settings after some days?
Yes. Settings in the sense, are you talking about CPU memory, changing it from tiny to medium?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Definitely you can do that. There are KB articles, that have complete documentation. You can definitely do it. But there are, some steps that you have to run.
Oh, okay,
But you can definitely do that. Now, this deployment will take close to about 30 minutes. Okay, let this go on. In the meantime, let me explain you more about vCenter.
Oh, it's not finished yet. Okay.
Yeah, it is
The
just
below is
started
showing
right now.
running. Okay. Sorry.
Right, so if you see over here, it shows it is deploying right now. It is at 4%.
Okay.
And this will go till like 100%, and then the stage 1 will be completed, and then we will go to stage 2. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we did only stage 1.
This is, you see over here, this is stage 1.
Okay.
Okay, then we'll go to stage 2. Now, let me tell you more about the vCenter in terms of history. What are the components of the vCenter, so that you understand how it basically works. So if I talk about vCenter back in old golden days, what used to happen was, If you need a VMware vCenter, you need to have a Windows machine. This was a requirement. And you need to have a SQL database or an Oracle database. This was a requirement I'm talking about back in 2014, back in 2012. Okay. If you needed a vCenter, you absolutely needed to have a Windows server, and you needed to have either a SQL Microsoft SQL server, or you needed to have an Oracle server. These were the only two options available. Now, what you had to do back in that time, you had to create a virtual machine, VM01. In good environments, you had to create another VM, a VM02. Here you would install Windows. Here you would install Windows. Here you would patch it and get it up to date. Here you would patch it, get everything up to date. Then here you would install SQL Server over here. For example, you would install SQL Server over here, create a database over here, and then you would point this server to this machine for database. And this was done via ODBC. So in Windows Server, you have this ODBC connection, other database connection. So you would tell VM01 that your database is VM02. And this is the way you reach it. And ODBC had that configuration, where it knew that how to reach VM02. Okay. Then you would install vCenter over here, and then you could use it. This was the configuration that you had to do back then. Okay. Now, there were some challenges with it. The biggest challenge was, what if a customer, there were many customers who actually told VMware, we don't use Windows. We are only a Linux shop. We only use Linux operating systems in our environment for anything and everything. It's not that, if you have Linux, you cannot do everything. If you have Linux, of course, you can do everything. You don't need a Windows machine. Why would you need a Windows machine? Okay. And it's cheaper in terms of licenses as well. So people said, to VMware that, why are you forcing us to buy a Windows license, have to pay for it? Why don't you give it us on a Linux machine? So what VMware did, they said, your point is fair enough. We'll work something on it. So what they did was, they created a virtual machine in their environment. They installed SUSE operating system on it. And then they installed a vCenter on it. Okay. And then they made everything, up and running, including the database over here. And they installed Postgres database. Like if you need a free operating system, you choose Linux. If you need a free database, you choose Postgres. Okay. So they created a virtual machine with SUSE operating system. They installed Virtual Center on it, and they installed Postgres database on it. And they created a package out of this virtual machine. Okay. This package was then exported and uploaded on the internet. Okay. Now people could just download this
Free?
package. Yeah, free.
Okay.
Yeah, free, just like this one. You can download it for free, but to use it, you have to give license, after 60 days.
Okay.
Yeah. So they uploaded the package to the internet, and then you could download it. Okay. And then import it in your environment, like what we did. So what we did in our environment was, we just imported it, and we said that, on which ESXi the VM should get created, what will be the name, what will be the data store, what will be the name, IP, DNS, all those basic configurations we gave. We are not manually creating a VM. We are not manually installing an operating system, nor we are manually installing the vCenter. Everything is done for us by default. Same would happen over here as well. So this is what VMware did. They would go ahead and create everything for you, upload it on the internet, and then, they would ask you to download this pack and just import it in your environment. This pre-packaged virtual machine is called appliance. When you hear the word appliance in VMware, this means it is a pre-packaged virtual machine. All that you have to do is download that appliance and import it on your ESXi. It will automatically create the VM, the operating system, the services, and everything. Doubts, confusion, questions so far? Okay. Now let me move on with the story. So now what happened was, what would happen was, earlier when VMware created this virtual center appliance, they were actually using SUSE operating system, and they were paying royalty. They were paying money to SUSE. They said, we'll stop using SUSE. What they did, they downloaded Linux, they tweaked it. Like, you can download Linux and you can have CentOS, Red Hat, Debian, Fedora, Ubuntu, SUSE, there's so many distributions of Linux. It is basically the same core Linux. You make changes according to yourself and then you give it a new name. VMware did the same thing. They downloaded Linux, they made changes to it, and they called it as Photon OS. Okay, so what they do now is vCenter is deployed on Photon OS. So right now, earlier SUSE operating system was there, but now it is everything running on Photon OS, and the version I believe is 3.0. This is what the version is. So if you Google up Photon OS, you will get a lot of details about VMware, creating it. So now what happens is vCenter, when you import it, it will automatically create a virtual machine. It will install Photon OS. It will install vCenter. It will install Postgres. It will bring the services up, and you are good to go. You start using your vCenter. Okay. Always remember the word appliance means a pre-packaged virtual machine. You do not have to create the VM from scratch or do everything from there on. You just import it, you get everything, all the settings, and you just give the basic details like name, IP, data store, NTP, DNS, few things here and there, and you are good to go. Doubts, confusions, questions so far? Now, let me move on with the story. Now, when I talk about vCenter, okay, there are few components that come with the vCenter. Okay. Okay, now let me explain you in a different way. VMware, when it started, back then, when I'm talking about 20 years back, like 2002, when they started, they only had two products, vCenter and esxi. That was it. Nothing else. You only had two products, and only these two products, you would use it, and you would just use with the VMware. Nothing else you had. Okay. With time, VMware kept on expanding their portfolio. They went into networking, they went into storage, they went into Kubernetes, they went into end user computing, they went into security, they went into WAN optimization, they went into application modernization, and they went into so many other things, right? Basically, VMware has footprint now into everything, right? VMware, what it started off in 2002 has drastically changed itself, by the time they are in 2022. In 2002, they were a very small company, looking after data center virtualization. In 2022, they give you everything. Let me give you an example. You go to Google and you type VMware products. And you see the first link over here. You click on the first link. You see these results, 165 products that they have. They started off with 2, now they are into 165. All the categories, application platform, cloud, anywhere, security, networking, emerging. You talk about it and they have a product for you, even an antivirus now. They have everything for you. Okay. So VMware has drastically changed. What has not changed is vCenter. Okay. For VMware, think about it, that vCenter is the sun, just like solar system. vCenter is the sun, is in the middle, and you have other products around it. For example, ESXi, VROPS, VRA, HCX, SRM, NSX, Workspace, Horizon, Tanzu, and on and on and on and on and on. They have so many products, but what is their one point? What is that one window from where you manage everything? vCenter. Their core, their one, I should say their one-stop shop for you to manage everything still remains the vCenter. It is one plane from where you do everything. Now, what happens over here? Basically, all these products that you see over here, when you install these products, they by default get integrated with vCenter. So when you install any product, it will always ask you, where is your vCenter? This is true for everything. Always everyone will ask you, where is your vCenter? Tell me, where is your vCenter? And everything gets boiled down to vCenter. So all these services, all these products are registering their services with vCenter. Okay. Which is that component which is making sure that all these components which are, when they are interacting or when they are registering with vCenter, it will work okay. There will be no problems. Everything would work fine. Who would make sure that every registration that happens with the vCenter, it is being tracked? Who is responsible for making sure that whichever service that comes in from VMware and tries to register, everything would work okay? That service is called PSC, Platform Services Controller. This is a product which is made, created, updated, troubleshot, everything done by VMware. This is a VMware in-house product. The use of the product PSC is this. This is the use of the product PSC. When you have so many products which are trying to integrate with vCenter, who will make sure that everything is going okay? It is PSC who will do this. Okay. Now, just like in Windows, you have something called as a domain. Which is my domain? Lab.local. Now, what is lab.local? Lab.local for me in Windows is a boundary. So for example, you can have a lab and I can have a lab. Okay. In your lab, you set up an Active Directory with lab.local. In my Active Directory, I set up lab.local. Now, does this mean, do they talk to each other or do they trust each other? No, they don't. Because your lab.local and mine lab.local are completely two different things. They may be of the same name, but that does not mean they will talk to each other. For example, you have an IP address on your laptop, 192.168.10.10. I have an IP address 192.168.10.10. Does this mean do we start talking to each other? No, no way. Right? It is your IP, which is completely different from mine. It might be same, but these are two different IPs altogether, and we have got nothing in common, except for the fact that yes, it is the same IP. But yeah, that is it. These are two different environments altogether. There is nothing in common. They do not talk to each other. They do not trust each other. Okay. Now, what would happen is if you have to create any machine over here, so you will add to lab.local. Because this is the boundary for the domain lab.local. It does not know about this domain, this boundary. This is a different boundary and this is a different boundary. So when you create products and when you register with lab.local, they come within this boundary. Okay, it knows that which policy needs to be pushed over here. It knows which is the product, how the authentication needs to be allowed and everything, because you fall within that boundary. Okay. Same is applicable with PSC. When you deploy PSC, you have to give a domain name. Just like Windows, you also have to give a domain name. By default, domain name for the PSC is vSphere.local. You can change it. There is no problem. Like, lab.local, I can have superman.local, I can have spiderman.local, I can keep anything, but this is the PSC's domain name. You need to have a domain name. This is the by default domain name, vSphere.local. It has an administrator as the username, and then you can give a password as you feel like. Okay. So all these components that get registered to this PSC, they are part of this domain. They fall within this boundary of domain. Okay. Now what would happen? What is the benefit of registering it to this domain? So what happens is I have another component which is running and within PSC, and that is called single sign-on. So what would happen is, as an end user, when you log into vCenter, you get access to esxi, all the components. Basically, anything which is connected to vCenter, you get access to it without having to enter your credentials again. This is what the magic of SSO can do. So for example, when you log in with administrator at vSphere.local on your vCenter, you can access all the other components which are linked to the vCenter. You do not have to, log in separately to other environments and, you then have to re-log in over there because they all come within one domain of PSC. And PSC has that information that what are the components that fall within my boundary. Doubts, confusion, question, if you did not understand this diagram, please let me know. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right,
Vibhav, I have doubt.
go ahead.
Go back to the other this one, the part, the picture.
Sayed, your voice is very low, buddy. Can you speak a bit louder, please?
Yeah. So can you go back to the other image for the domain you showed us, right? Yeah. Okay. In here, okay, I got this one. These are two different labs. Okay, lab local is one, lab local is two. They do not have unless and until we give the trust. Okay. In here, I did not understand the platform service concept.
Okay. So what would happen is when you say, okay, we understand that vCenter is the center of everything when it
Yes,
comes to VMware.
all the components I understood. Only for the PSC, how it is integrated with VC.
Okay. So when you have so many other VMware products trying to integrate with vCenter, who is responsible for making sure that every registration happens okay?
Yeah, like PSC.
Correct. PSC is the one which will make sure that if you want to talk to vCenter, no problem, PSC is here. PSC will make sure that everything goes okay. Okay. It is PSC
Yeah.
who's trying to make sure.
Yeah.
How will PSC keep a control that which components are coming in, which components are not coming in? It needs to create a domain. It needs to create a boundary so that, products which get aligned to it are within the boundary of PSC. What is the boundary for PSC? It is vSphere.local, just like a domain name. When I talk about Windows AD, when I talk about, let's forget about VMware. Okay, let's talk about Windows AD, right? When I create a Windows AD of lab.local, okay, and I create a user, on that user, I can assign policy.
Yeah.
I can assign assignments. I can control it. Basically, I can do the admin tasks on this user because this user belongs to my domain. Same is applicable over here as well. With PSC, whosoever falls within this domain It can apply policies to it. It can enable single sign-on so that you do not have to log in twice. It enables a single user pane of glass. I mean, from one window you manage everything. All this is done when it comes to password policy, rotation, and all other things. It can be done from PSC. So PSC is a component when it comes to license replication.
Okay, PSC is a component of what? Which product? vCenter. You mean to say?
vCenter.
Oh,
So when
okay.
you say that I install vCenter, with
Oh,
vCenter, PSC, single sign-on, and the database Postgres, they automatically get installed.
okay. So within once you install VC, all these components will be available. Okay, okay, okay.
Everything will get installed. All
It
that
is
I was
part of
trying to
it,
do
it
is
is part of VC.
correct. All that I was trying to
Okay.
do is explain you what the components will do,
Yes. Okay.
so that you understand what is the concept of POC, what is the concept of PSC, why do we need it? Why do we need a single sign-on? What is a Postgres? Why do we need it? This is
Yeah, yeah.
important so
Now I
that you
got it
understand.
because where I misunderstood was we said it is a like domain, right? It will create a separate domain as such when you create a PSA. Then I got confused. How is it possible? Yeah.
Okay.
Then now I got to know it is part. It is one of the components within VC. Okay, vCenter. Okay.
Correct. So what we are doing right now is in stage 1, we are installing it. In stage 2, when we come to stage 2, there it will ask you, tell me the PSC domain name. There it will ask you what is the domain name that you want to keep. Do you want to keep vSphere.local or do you want to keep something else? Okay. SSO is by default included in this. Postgres is by default included in this. But for the
Okay.
PSC, it will ask you for your domain name on the second stage. This is why it is important for you to get the concept of PSC, single sign-on, Postgres, and everything. Okay. Is this clear to you, Sayed?
Yeah, very much clear. Thank you.
Earlier, what used to happen is that you had one VM on which you installed PSC. You had another VM on which you installed vCenter, and you had another VM on which you installed your database. Earlier, you used to have 3 different machines altogether. This approach was called external deployment. This approach was called external deployment. However, now what they have done is you create one VM. Here you install PSC, VC, single sign-on, Postgres, everything is on one box. This approach is called embedded approach. Okay. So when we were initiating vCenter installation, there was a message over there on the top that external deployment is deprecated. This is because now this is not supported. Only this is supported. You cannot go with this. This is absolutely no. There is no option you can do this. This is the only option to go with now. So when you will log into the vCenter, you will see embedded word coming up over there. So you should know that why the embedded word is there. So when you get an understanding, it will be of help to you. Okay, you get it now? Guys, any question so far? If you have any, let me know. Okay, now moving on to the story of vCenter. There's still so many things to talk about vCenter. vCenter basically has 2 URLs. Okay. First vCenter URL is on port 443. The 4443 one is the one from where you manage your environment. I was talking about, like vCenter gives you advanced features, central management of console. How would you access it? So you need to access the vCenter URL on port 443. When you access it on port 443, you get central management, advanced features. You do everything from here. This is your daily window. Okay, this is your daily window from where you manage anything and everything. Okay. There is another window for vCenter, which is on port number 5480. This port and the window that you get to is called a VAMI page. VAMI stands for VMware Appliance Management Interface. Okay, this is what it means.
Hello, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
So basically VAMI page, sorry, I got distracted. So VAMI page is the one, so VAMI page is the one, like for example, if you want to change the IP address of the vCenter, if you want to change the name of the vCenter, NTP, the DNS configured over here, if you want to change all these settings, if you want to restart a service for the vCenter, if you want to see the health of the vCenter, if you want to see which SSO is running over here. So all these configuration, I mean the vCenter itself, the vCenter's configuration, if you want to change, if you want to edit, you go to 5480. This is a very common port that you will find on many VMware appliances. For example, if you take the replication appliance, the SRM appliance, they have this by default port number of 5480. 5480 port number means for that specific appliance, if you want to change the configuration like name, IP, DNS, all those things, that can be changed from here. Any confusions on these two URLs? Please let me know. Okay. Now we see over here that, my VCSA, my VM got created. It automatically got powered on, and see it is, like just trying to do few things here and there. So yeah, so by default VAMI page, 5480, it's there on many, appliances, and this is there for the configuration. Okay. All right. What else I need to tell you about vCenter? Yeah. Let me tell you more about this. Now let me tell you what happens, after the vCenter installation is done. So we spoke about what vCenter is, deploying, how does it happen, how does it work. We spoke about all those options. Now let's talk about what would happen after the vCenter is deployed. Okay. When the vCenter is deployed, it has close to about 15 plus services. Like when you install any service on a Windows machine like IIS or SQL, there are few services that get created. Every application has some service in the backend, to make sure that whether that application is working well or not. So with vCenter, when you deploy it, by default, 15 services will get created by default. That is what it is. And I'll show you a list of these services on these services on how you can view it and what these services stand for. So I'll show you all those details about it. vCenter, as I mentioned, is backed on Photon OS. It is backed by Linux. So you can do an SSH and it would work on port number 22. Okay. And it works well. So there are no concerns over that. You can always SSH to it. You can log in to 5480 and you can access the details over UI. That too also works well. Okay. Now, when you have your first ESXi. Okay. This is your ESXi. And what you have done is now that you have created a vCenter on this. Okay. You created a vCenter on this ESXi. So you have a virtual machine which is there running on the ESXi. Basically, one of the things that you do on vCenter is that you add esxi-host. Okay, you add esxi-host. So whenever I talk about a virtual machine, VC01, this is a virtual machine. Where would a VM run? It will always run on the ESXi. When the virtual center is installed, then when you log into the vCenter on port 443, you will be using SSO admin credentials. Okay, that is administrator, whatever the spelling is, administrator at vSphere.local. That is your single sign-on domain. So when you install vCenter, who would have the permission to log in? It is this account by default, which has the only and the complete permissions. It is administrator at vSphere.local. Then you can add your vCenter to Active Directory, and you can have AD groups log into vCenter with their credentials. I mean, that is something that can be done later. But when you install vCenter for the first time and when you try accessing it over port 443, it is SSO administrator which will have the complete credentials to log in. When you log into vCenter over port 5480, then you log in via root and the username that you defined during the creation. So you remember when we were trying to create vCenter, it asks for password. It asks for the root password. Where would we use that root password? On port 5480. When we are trying to log in on port 443, we use the SSO admin credentials. When we log into port 5480, we use root credentials over here. Okay. On vCenter, the first job that we have to do is we have to add our ESXi host. Okay, this is a one-time activity that you have to do. Okay, this is a one-time activity that you have to do, is that you add your ESXi host over here.
Sorry, I have a question.
Go for it.
What could likely make an ESXi server to disconnect from vCenter?
Yeah, let me answer that question for you after 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Let me explain it to you and you will get your answer. Okay.
Okay.
So what we do as a one-time activity is we add the ESXIs. So for example, if you have 10 ESXIs, 100 ESXIs, 2000 ESXIs, this is a one-time activity that you have to do. You have to add all those 2000 ESXIs to your vCenter. This is a one-time activity that needs to be performed. Now, what happens, when you add an ESXi to your vCenter? Let me talk about that now. Okay. So this is your ESXi. On ESXi, you have one account which can do everything for you, and that is the root account, because ESXi is backed by Linux. So root account is the one that can do everything for you. Okay. So over here, when we log into the ESXi, so basically we log in via root, and then I can create the virtual machine. I can add a data store. I can do everything because it is the root account which can do everything for me. Now I have a vCenter over here. Okay. I have a vCenter over here. vCenter 01, for example. What I have to do is that I have to add this ESXi to vCenter. So on the vCenter console, I see an option of adding an esxi host. When I add esxi to the vCenter, what would happen is vCenter will push an agent. What would happen is vCenter will push an agent to the esxi box. This agent is called vpxa. The main service of a vCenter is called vpxd. vCenter's service name is vpxd. When you add an esxi to vCenter, vCenter will push an agent on esxi, and that agent is called vpxa. So if you add 2000 esxi boxes on the vCenter, all those 2000 esxi boxes will get this agent vpxa, because every esxi that gets added to vCenter will automatically push this agent vpxa, and it will get deployed on the esxi box. Okay. Now, once this is done, you as an end user, you will log into vCenter. You will tell vCenter to create a virtual machine. vCenter will give this information to vpxa, because where will the virtual machine be created? On the esxi. Okay, it is not getting created on the vCenter. You are only managing your environment from the vCenter. Whatever request you give to the vCenter, everything will go to vpxa, the agent on the vCenter. vpxa will tell the local management agent on the vCenter, which is called host D. It will tell host D to create a VM, and host D will create the VM and will send the information back, and accordingly you will get the information. So when you go on the vCenter to create a VM, vCenter is basically telling vpxa, its agent on the esxi, create a VM. vpxa tells the local host D agent, the management agent of the esxi, to create the VM. Host D will create the VM, do everything for you, will tell vpxa, vpxa tells vCenter, and vCenter tells you that this job is done. Now, to Solomon's questions, what would happen and why would vCenter get disconnected and esxi will get disconnected? You have a vCenter and you have an esxi. When you add esxi to the vCenter, you basically add it over the management IP. There is a FQDN, there is a management IP that the vCenter knows about. So vCenter knows that if it has to reach esxi 01, This is the IP to reach. This is the FQDN to reach. If this IP is not reachable, this ESXi is disconnected. Because how would vCenter know? How would one machine know to talk to the other machine? Two machines talk to each other on the network over IP, right? They would send the request over network. It is basically IP, and then the machine would say, okay, I know you. Yeah, you are reachable. I am reachable. But what if this IP is not reachable? The IP that vCenter knows to reach the ESXi, that IP is not reachable. It's not responding. What would happen? ESXi will say, I cannot reach this ESXi. So it will come to the disconnected mode. Solomon, does this answer your question?
It does.
Cool.
So in other words, if the IP comes back.
Solomon, just give me 2 minutes. Just give me 2 minutes. Sorry to interrupt you. Just give me 2 minutes. Stage 1 is completed. Okay. So you see over here that it says that you have successfully deployed the stage 1. Now you need to proceed with the stage 2. So it is saying that to complete the installation of the vCenter, you now need to proceed to the stage 2. Now there are 2 ways to go about it. You can either hit continue over here and you can move on to the second stage, or if you hit close button over here, then you can reach this URL. So if
this is only for WAMI, right? 5480.
Correct, but you have to go with the second stage, no? During the deployment of the vCenter, after completing the first stage, if you want to go with the second stage later, right? You can hit this URL and you can reach the second stage only during the deployment till the time vCenter is not deployed. When the vCenter is deployed, then you go to the WAMI page. Both these stages need to be completed for you to take you to the WAMI page. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I hit close over here and if I reach this URL later, I mean, I will be presented with the same window again. Okay. I hit continue and I'm proceeding with stage 2 now. Now here you see stage 1, green check, everything is okay. You go to stage 2, set up vCenter. Basically, you configure your vCenter. I hit next and it says time synchronization. It says that you need to sync time. How do you want to sync time? I say you can sync time with NTP, which is my NTP server. I would say 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. You can sync time with my domain controller. This is my domain controller. You can sync time with it. Do you want to enable SSH? Yes, I want to enable SSH. The other option is you can sync time with ESXi. So what you can do, for example, the vCenter on whichever ESXi it is running, if you go to the manage tab of the ESXi, you go to date and time settings, you fill out all these details and then you can sync the time over here. So these are both the options available. I'll choose right now to sync time with my NTP server and you can give the NTP server that you have in your environment. Okay, for me, I'll say it is 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. My local domain controller, it is showing me the right time. I'll hit next. It will take a minute to try reaching that server. Okay. Now you see the configuration over here. Single sign-on domain, right? What is SSO? SSO is that, when so many products get integrated with vCenter, when you log into vCenter, you do not have to, when you are navigating to that product, you don't have to enter the credentials again. Okay. So it is basically asking for a domain name. You hit the I button, it will basically tell you what the domain name should be like. By default, you see vSphere.local. You can keep anything over here, Spiderman.local, Superman.local, whatever you want to. Okay. Most of the people keep it by default and some change it. It's a lab, let me keep it the default. By default, it is the administrator. And then it is asking me for a password. Which password would you like to keep? I'll keep the default one, welcome at 123W in caps. So when my vCenter gets installed and when I log into port 443, it is administrator at vSphere.local, which will have the complete authority and the permissions to log into the vCenter for the first time. Okay. I hit next. Here it talks about VMware customer experience improvement program, that same program that we were talking about earlier when we logged into esxi. Examples such as vSphere Health, vSAN performance, and all these things will be connected, will be sent to VMware, no personal
Not open
information.
anything there.
Sorry, Solomon? Okay. So it'll basically, have all these informations. Nothing personal will be collected from your environment. Do you want to join it? If you want to join it, fine. Don't want to join it, don't join. It's up to your wish. Hit next. This is what it looks like, that you are going with it ahead with a single sign-on domain of vSphere.local. Here is the username. This is what it looks like, and you hit finish. It says once enabled, cannot be stopped. Do you want to go ahead with this? I say, okay, go ahead with this. And this is, I have now triggered stage 2 deployment. Okay. This will again take 30 minutes to complete. Solomon, sorry I interrupted you when you were asking your question, buddy. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sayed.
Yeah, where is platform service?
It is there integrated with it. I mean,
it will not ask for like.
no. It will not show you. Correct, because now everything is integrated, no? Because in one box, they do everything for you.
Yeah. Because I thought like SSO it would ask.
Correct, but when this installation completes, there is a word you will see over there of PSC. You will see Platform Services Controller. So it is important for you to know what the word PSC exactly means. If you don't know what PSC is, you will see the word and you will be like, what is this? Okay. Solomon, you had a question, buddy? You are there? Okay, you might come back later. That's fine. All right then. So yeah, that's about it, that I have for today. This will take 30 minutes. I mean, there's no point in waiting. And in the next class, this will get completed. Once it gets completed, I'll share a snippet on the WhatsApp group to show you on what it looks like. And then we can log into the URL and, we can just, access it from there.
I have a small question.
Go ahead, Sayed.
We installed this on esxi-01. We said the one we are installing vCenter, right?
Sayed, your voices again has gone down low. Can you speak a bit louder, please?
Yeah. So we are installing this on esxi-01, right? Okay. Now, as you said, we can add other esxi host as well, right?
Correct.
That is the main purpose of this centralized
management.
Okay. Should we also by default vCenter like esxi host is installed within this vCenter, or do we need to manually do it?
I did not get your question.
This vCenter, we're installing it on esxi-01.
Right? As a virtual machine, not inside.
Yes, as a correct. Yeah, as a virtual machine, like
Right.
Now to have access for esxi-01 from vCenter, do we need to add esxi-01 as well?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
This is a one-time activity. So all
even
the
ESXis, it is installed locally, it has to do it manually. Okay.
Correct. So this is a one-time activity that every ESXi in your environment that you want it to be managed from that vCenter, it needs to be added to that vCenter. So if you have 2000 boxes in your environment that you want to add it to your vCenter manually, or you can automate it also via script. But the point is, all those 2000 boxes for the first time, they need to be added to the vCenter. And then only it would work. This can be managed from vCenter, I mean, because it has to push the VPX agent, no? If it cannot push the VPX agent, how will it manage it?
No, that is okay. But my doubt was because since it is residing locally in esxi-01, is it mandatory? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. For that one also, for that ESXi also.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, guys. So let's wrap up the class today. I think we had a good class today. Good amount of information we spoke about. All right then. So let's meet on next Saturday, 3 p.m. Indian time. And then, we'll have the class for 3 hours on Saturday, just like today, and we'll continue on.
Thank you so very
Yeah,
much.
thank you, Vaibhav.
No problem, guys. As always, if you have any questions at any point, any doubt, you can always send a WhatsApp audio message to the group. Just explaining your question. No need to type it. I'm not a big fan of typing on WhatsApp.
Okay,
Just send a
sure,
audio
sure.
message, and we'll be more than happy to look into it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
All
Thank you,
right, guys. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.